So this is the miter saw, and what I would like to do is I want to go over the purpose of it, the biggest safety concerns, and then kind of fill out with all the rules and things that we need to apply overall to make sure that we can do things well. So first off, purpose of this machine. Typically, this is used whenever you have a large piece of lumber, particularly when I say large, I'm talking about length. All right, something that is very long, and you need to cut it down to a specific length that's going to make it a lot easier to cut safely on all the other machines. So purpose, cut something down to an appropriate length. As far as cutting safely, there's two major things on this machine that we need to make sure that we're going to do in order to use it safely. All right. First off, the biggest thing you need to make sure and be aware of is your fingers should never be too close to the blade. All right? There is a line on either side of this blade that is 8 inches. Your fingers should never be on either side within 8 inches of that blade. All right? If something were to go awry and your fingers are outside of that 8 inches area, you will be in a much safer spot as to if you had put your hand right next to the blade and something bad happens. All right? So that's the biggest safety thing with this one. If you keep your fingers away, even if something bad happens, you've just put yourself in a good spot to stay safe. Second biggest thing with this machine is it's called kickback. We need to make sure that we avoid kickback at all costs. Kickback is when a piece of wood ends up getting thrown at full force of the velocity of the spinning blade. It's pretty scary. All right? But there are two easy ways to make sure that never happens. Kickback happens when the blade catches into a piece of wood, and instead of just cutting through it, it grabs it and it throws it. So the reason why that happens is the wood is not fully supported and it ends up being able to move. So what we need to do is when we go to cut something, we need to make sure that the wood is pressed all the way up against the fence and it's flat against it, and it's all the way flat against the table. If it is not in either of those conditions, you have yourself potential for there to be kickback. It doesn't mean it's just automatically going to happen, but the more chance that as you cut through the wood, it's going to move, pinch in on the blade, you are putting yourself in more danger. So those are two things, keeping our hands away and pushing our wood all the way up against the fence and up against the table, that we really need to make sure. Those are the big two on this machine. You do those two, you'll be in good shape. All right, beyond the big two things that I just said, there's a lot of other simple rules that we can make sure to follow to use this safely. First and foremost, always wear your safety glasses. And when I say wear your safety glasses, I don't mean on your head. I mean over the two eyes that have been given to you that you got to protect. Beyond that, no matter what you're wearing, we want to make sure that it is going to be safe. So if you are wearing anything loose or you're wearing jewelry, we need to try to fix that before we go to use this. So if it's a necklace, we tuck it in or we put it in our pocket. If it's bigger earrings that are hanging down, we take them out. If it's a long sleeve shirt, we roll it up. If it's a hoodie with strings that come down, we tuck them in. We want to make sure that we have everything as close to our body as possible to be as safe as possible. Next up on the list of things we want to do is if anything were to go wrong and you think something needs fixed, don't try to do it while the power's on. All right? Best case scenario, call me over and have me look at it, but at the very meantime, maybe unplug the machine from the wall and we can try to fix things while the power's off so nobody can get hurt. When you use this, the button on this is primarily geared for right-handed people, so you should be standing with your right hand using it, and your left hand should be holding things down. Never, ever, ever cross your arms so that when you go to cut, the saw blade could come down into your arm. Might seem silly, but you got to think things through and make sure that you're not putting yourself in a compromised position. So never cross your arms when you're cutting. You should never, ever, ever, when you're using this, saw freehand. In other words, don't just try to hold something off the fence. We already talked about kickback, but if you're just trying to saw something without having it fully supported, that's a big safety hazard. If you have something that's extremely long and it goes all the way out of frame, off the edge of this table, you want to make sure it's supported. Grab a friend over and have them support that wood so that when we cut, the wood doesn't tip up off of the table and up into the blade and cause a safety hazard. So if you have something really long, grab somebody to actually support that. When you cut something, you need to make sure that the blade comes to a complete stop before you reach in or try to pull the wood off of it. All right, it happens pretty fast. There's a break on this, but you need to wait till the blade comes to a complete stop to be as safe as possible. If you are ever cutting something that is wide, that when you stick it on here, it comes out pretty far, you will want to make sure that when you use this, you pull the actual saw blade out towards your body first, like this, then come down, and then to finish the cut, push it straight back while it's down. All right, that is going to be the safest possible operation. If you bring it down and then out, that is less safe. There's more chance of kickback. So you want to, while it's up, pull it out, go down, and then in. All right, so that's an important one as well. If you are ever cutting something that is small, that's less than 8 inches, that you cannot safely put your hand on, we're going to need to use something else to hold that down. You can see right now I have a custom clamp clamped onto this. This will work well for certain height pieces of wood, but if you are ever cutting something and you can't hold it down, we need to come up with some jig, some fixture, some clamp to hold that down for you, because you cannot cut freehand without having anything held down. That is a safety violation, a safety hazard. All right, lastly, guys, I just want you guys to know some of the basic parts of these machines, so that way when you come over to it, you're not saying this thingy or that thingy, but we can use some of the right vocab. So I'm just going to quickly go over some of the main parts that you should know for this one. First off, we have the lower guard. This is going to get out of the way when you cut things. That is exposing the blade right here. Up on top, we have the power button. All right, so it's a push button that will turn on and off as we go. There's also a light here so that we can have a clear line for exactly where the blade is going to cut. Coming down to the bottom, we have the turntable. All right, and this is called the turntable because this whole thing can spin. And we come out here, we have the miter lock and the miter latch, where if you unlock it by bringing that up and squeeze your finger in, you can rotate this wherever you want and it will lock in. And we can look down at the miter scale to see the exact percentage that you want it at. So if I want to go to 0, you can hear it locks in, and now we have it perfectly set at 0 degrees. Up against the back here, this is just referred to as the fence. That's always going to be the thing that we push it up against. The yellow part where the blade goes through is going to be referred to as the kerf plate, and that's going to be important. And lastly, along the back, we have the rails, and that's what's going to allow the machine to slide back and forth. And we have the rail lock knob, which if we tighten that, you'll feel a little bit of pressure. I can no longer pull this out. It will now just go straight down and only down. And lastly, we have a little plastic piece here hooked up to the dust collection. This is the dust vent that allows all of it to get sucked out as we go. So those are the parts. That was the primary safety things, some of the overall arching rules that you should do, and the big overall purpose of this machine. So now you know a little bit about the miter saw, so you should be able to take a safety quiz and feel pretty confident using this machine.